So Bitcoin just tapped $105,000 and it looks like it wants to go higher. So are the bulls back in control or is this a bear market rally? Well, today we're going to dive into the charts and take a deeper look. So looking at Bitcoin on the weekly, I want to do something different today. I want to go through a little bit of macro analysis on, what's suggesting this is going to be a sustained bull market rally and what are the possible implications, or what can we look out for on a pullback in terms of distance of a pullback. And what I've done is I've looked at the key lows from the past and the moves we've had out of those key lows and what the retracements have been following those moves. So this current low that we put in April, we're currently at 41.2% since that low. Obviously, we haven't had a pullback yet, but it is expected that we're going to see a pullback in the near future. So our last key low was back in August 2024, and we had a nice 36% move, followed by an 11.46 retrace. Okay, so right now from where the current high is, an 11.46 retrace would have us at around $93,000 if we were to do that pullback. Okay, so looking at some other data points, obviously the kilo out of the bear market, we got a 49% move, similar to what we're seeing right now. A little bit of a pullback, one push higher, and then we got this 22.77% pullback, had another move higher, 59%, and then later on that year we got a 24% pullback. So 22, 24, very realistic to see that. Looking, considering where we're at in the cycle, I wanted to look at similar time to last cycle. You can see out of this low we had, key low last cycle, we had an 83% push to the upside and then over a 25% pullback. So again, 25, 22, 24, very realistic. And we could be in for something similar. Now, if looking at the current high at 105, if we were to pull back from there 20%, we would be in this demand zone sitting at 84.2. If we were to get a 25% pullback, that would take us all the way down to close to $79,000. So I think a 25% pullback is on the cards. 79K could be on the cards, and at that point, if it was an aggressive drop to the downside, all the bears would come back out and be calling for a retest of this trend line at 62K or 69,000, a retest of last cycle's high. And then that would be normally the point then when you see an actual reversal. So personally, market looks strong. We've had a very strong push to the upside. I'm not sure what the pullback will look like. Could be quite a shallow pullback if the market remains strong, but if a piece of news or fundamentals comes out and changes that, you could get an aggressive move back down. Personally, what I've done here is I basically got my fib from the high to the low. You can also use a GAN box here, take that low up to the high. And basically this bottom 50% is the discount. This is the premium. We are trading at a premium right now. I personally am not interested in bidding anything on Bitcoin until we're back in a discount, so below the 50%. So from here, that would be, I don't even know if that fib is taken. I don't think that fib is taken from, it's taken from the high. So 50% level is 89,750. That's where I would start to bid, but my heavier positions would be in this demand zone, which we can see clearly on the 4-hour. Get rid of this GAN box. So when we came up out of this low, made this little pennant. We created this consolidation period. That is kind of where I think price might go. And that's around that 86,000 mark. 86,134 is my real area of interest, with leaving some room to go, DCA lower if need be. I am expecting a pullback in the near future. The max I could see the market continuing to push is another 1 to 2 weeks, because if you zoom out and look at the weekly chart, basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks to the upside, possibly 7 weeks, then we're kind of overbalanced, probably going to get a deep pullback at that point. So, even now 5 weeks up is pretty uncommon when you look back at the charts. Even with the Trump, you had 3 here and then a pullback. With the Trump pump, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, you could call it 5, 6 weeks up, then you got a pullback. In the ETF, you had 1, 2, 3, 4 inside week 5, 6, little consolidation near the top, and then the pullback happened. So, the move like we've just had, you've got to be thinking that we're getting that pullback in the next 1 to 2 weeks. Pullbacks, if we're going to pull back to continue higher, it's probably going to be a bit of a flush, couple of weeks, 1 to 2 weeks max down. We can look at these, here, this push out of the bottom, 2 weeks down, up week, 3 weeks down, and then up week. Same thing happened, here, push up, a more extended drop. We've already, had multiple months down, so I do think that the drop will be 1 to 2 weeks and then a continuation higher. I've drawn out an Elliott wave. We've clearly, almost finished the current wave 5. We're currently sitting at 105. It's possible that we go up to the 106 mark. 106.5 is major resistance, and that's kind of where we broke down from previously. After the all-time high, we came up, retested the 106 level, and then fell. So if we do move up a little higher in the next 1 to 2 weeks, I'm looking at 106 as a possible rejection. And that would complete the one wave of the macro Elliott. So that would be in around here. Then we come down for this retrace, and then wave 3 is typically your massive impulse wave, strongest, longest wave. Most likely because we are getting to the tail end of the bull run. That correction from 3 to 4 will probably be quite a severe drop. Could be looking at another 30% drop at that point. So something like, if we hit 160, something down to like 114, 112 would be a 30% drop. Get a lot of people out of the market, shake it all out, and then buying steps in, and then just you get something like a short squeeze to send out the cycle. Just my idea. That's what I'm following. The other chart we want to look at is the Bitcoin dominance chart. Okay. So from that high, it had a very big drop. Still overall, it's been up only, on the daily chart. It's been pretty much up only. But we did get a top signal here. We've had this 3-day down, and oftentimes I haven't really back tested it on the dominance chart, but on Bitcoin, this 3-day down from the high has previously marked out a prolonged period of time where we're going to trade under this high right here. So when I say prolonged period for Bitcoin, it's been, anything from 3 to 6 months of trading under this high. So, we could go down now and, trade under this high for possibly 6 months, which would take us out to around November before we actually try to attempt to break that again. So good for your altcoins if it plays out, but we are still in a channel. So be interesting to see if we can break out of this channel. Possible if we get that retest right here and it rejects, then alt season this is probably where alt season really kicks off right here. If that rejects, people will start to transfer or sell Bitcoin and move into alts, in my opinion, once they get that signal. And dominance, the Bitcoin or the US dollar dominance chart we're going to look at here. Sorry, that's not it. This is it. And we went over this in other videos. I've been talking about it since back in February when we were consolidating here, that there was a potential Elliott wave forming. I did draw it out at the time and it almost played out to perfection. Basically said that we would come back up to this high. Drew the 3 here. I had my 4 a little bit deeper than this. Got a shallow retrace and then finished that off. So clearly has broken down now. And looking at, where this might go. Well, this period here, back in February, Bitcoin and alts were just ranging. They were down quite a bit. They were stuck, and you could just play the range here. But after 3 taps on either side, it was looking a little sketchy, and that's when I suggested we might get a 4th time breakout. We got the 4th time breakout. So what that shows us is this is a key area of resistance, or not, was a key area of resistance. Now it's going to be a key area of support. We did come down and I thought we would get a bounce at the top. We didn't. We consolidated for 1 day, then broke below. Now we're trading in this range. I do expect that we come down to the bottom of that range, and that might be where we see a bounce. So that yellow line is the bottom of the range. It lines up with where I've got my A, where I think we might, bounce. And what it also lines up with is a macro trend line from the top right here. So not only is it support, it's also support from the diagonal, it's support from the horizontal. And then looking at where that bounce might take us, basically drawn from the high we had to, the A point hasn't come in yet, but when it does, to that A point, that 50% level is going to act as a key resistance. So I expect a bead move up to that. And if we zoom in a little, you can see that there's a fair value gap created there. And that would be a point where we move up into and then reject. And what's interesting, if you do the same thing on Bitcoin and we take the whole move up that we just had from the low, and we put the GAN box on, so from here to the current high, you can see that we also have a fair value gap created right there. And that lines up with the 50% level from the swing, creating a fair value gap. Then over on the dollar, 50% swing with a fair value gap. So this is where I would expect B to come from. And for this chart, that would be roughly, anything from a 21 to 22% move. But it would be, on the dominance chart, it would be 6.1 to like a 7.3 move. And on Bitcoin, that would be from the high down to that fair value gap in the 50% would be a 14% pullback. So it's my idea. That's what I'm, trying to prepare for in my mind when I'm looking at trading these markets. So I'm cautiously bullish. Definitely don't want to be getting any heavy longs here. If you did get in your longs down at the bottom, down at the lows, then obviously you're in a much better position. But make sure you're taking profits along the way, using trail and stops. If you're in really good entries, you can use a trail and stop to protect your capital. The last chart I want to look at is the total chart. And we're going to look at those kind of moves as well on the weekly, the corrective moves. So similar to Bitcoin, we've had a 44% move to the upside. We could get, anything from a 20% to 25% move to the downside. Looking at history here, 87% move from this low to this high. And then you got 30% pullbacks from the bear market low, 42% to the high, 20% pullback last cycle, 118% move from the high. Remember on Bitcoin, that was about an 80% move. So you can see that this move up was actually a lot more bullish for altcoins than it was for Bitcoin. And then it resulted in a 28% pullback. So 28% pullback is not off the cards. And that would have us, down below 2.5 trillion. I think 2.5 trillion is a bit of a psychological level. And it's also 25% pullback from here. So that's just some macro analysis for you this week. But yeah, things look bullish, things look good, but don't get overly bullish and caught in any major longs at this point. So take care, and I will see you in the next video.